They called her useless every single day, until the moment she became the only thing standing between a sniper's bullet and two innocent babies. Hey there, my beautiful family and friends. Welcome back. If you're ready to settle in for another unforgettable story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Hearing from you, no matter where you are in the world, always makes my day. And hey, if you enjoy this one, stay tuned because there are always more powerful stories on the way, and you definitely don't want to miss them. Before we begin, do me a favor, like this video, also subscribe, and share it with someone you love. You never know whose heart this story might touch. Now, let me take a moment to speak into your life. I pray that whatever burden you're carrying, you find peace that passes all understanding. I pray that in the quiet moments when no one sees your tears, God sees you and comforts you. I pray for healing over every broken piece of your heart, and strength to rise again no matter how many times life has knocked you down. May joy find its way back to you, even if you've forgotten what it feels like. May your faith be reignited, your spirit lifted, and may love, real deep, unconditional love, surround you wherever you are right now. You're not forgotten, you're not invisible, and you're not alone. This community is your safe space, and this story, like all the others, is here to remind you just how powerful your journey truly is. Now take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let's dive into today's story. Zara Williams adjusted her scrubs for the third time that morning, the fabric never quite sitting right on shoulders that had once carried the weight of a sniper rifle across desert terrain. Now they carried the weight of something heavier, the constant reminder that in the pristine halls of Metropolitan General Hospital, she was seen as nothing more than a mistake in hiring. "Williams, you're late for rounds again." Dr. Mitchell's voice cut through the morning bustle of the pediatric ward, sharp enough to make the other nurses glance up from their charts. His tone carried that particular brand of disdain reserved for people he considered beneath his notice, which, unfortunately for Zara, seemed to be most days. "I was in the NICU checking on the Morrison twins," Zara replied evenly, her voice steady despite the familiar not forming in her stomach. "Their oxygen levels dropped during the night shift, and I wanted to." "That's not your job." Dr. Mitchell didn't even look up from his tablet, his fingers dancing across the screen with practiced indifference. "We have specialists for that. Your job is to follow orders, not play doctor." The words hung in the air like smoke from a discharged weapon. Zara felt the familiar burn of injustice in her chest, the same feeling she'd carried for the past 18 months since starting at Metropolitan General. Around them, the morning shift continued its choreographed dance. Nurses checking vitals, orderlies wheeling patients to procedures, the soft beeping of monitors creating a symphony of healing that Zara had once found comforting. Now it just sounded like a countdown. "Of course, Dr. Mitchell," she said, the words tasting like copper pennies in her mouth. She'd learned that fighting back only made things worse, only gave them more ammunition to use against her in their whispered conversations by the coffee machine. "What do you think about workplace dynamics like this? Have you ever witnessed someone being underestimated because of who they are rather than what they can do? Share your thoughts below." As Dr. Mitchell walked away, his white coat billowing behind him like a cape of superiority, Zara caught the sympathetic glance from Jenny, one of the younger nurses. But sympathy wasn't what she needed. What she needed was respect, recognition, a chance to show that the woman they dismissed as useless had once been trusted with life-and-death decisions that made their daily medical emergencies look like paper cuts. But that was a lifetime ago, in a desert half a world away, where her steady hands and keen eye had saved more lives than she could count. Here, in the sterile corridors of Metropolitan General, those same hands were only trusted to change bedpans and take temperatures. Zara made her way to the NICU, her soft-soled shoes silent against the polished floor. Through the large windows, she could see the tiny forms of premature babies fighting their first battles for survival. The Morrison twins, born at 28 weeks, lay in their incubators like small miracles wrapped in tubes and wires. Baby A, Emma, had been struggling with her breathing overnight. Baby B, Ethan, seemed stronger, but in Zara's experience, twins often shared more than just DNA. They shared fate. She pressed her palm against the cool glass, watching the gentle rise and fall of Emma's chest. Such small lungs, working so hard. It reminded her of something her drill sergeant used to say. "Size don't matter when you got heart, soldier. Heart's what keeps you breathing when everything else wants to quit." These babies had heart. She could see it in the way they fought, in the way their tiny fingers curled around the tubes that kept them alive. They were fighters, just like she had been. Just like she still was, even if nobody here seemed to notice. Talking to yourself again, Williams? Zara turned to find Dr. Patricia Reeves, the head of pediatrics, approaching with a coffee cup that probably cost more than Zara made in a day. Dr. Reeves was one of the few people at Metropolitan General who didn't actively make Zara's life miserable, but she wasn't exactly an ally either. She was neutral territory in a war Zara seemed to be fighting alone. Just checking on the twins, Zara replied. Emma's oxygen saturation improved overnight, but I'm concerned about. You're concerned? Dr. Reeves raised an eyebrow, not unkindly, but with the sort of professional skepticism that Zara had grown accustomed to. That's Dr. Mitchell's call to make, don't you think? The dismissal was gentler than Dr. Mitchell's, wrapped in politeness and professional hierarchy, but it stung just the same. Zara nodded, swallowing the words she really wanted to say. Words about how she'd seen enough trauma to recognize the signs of impending respiratory distress. Words about how her instincts had been honed in places where a wrong call meant body bags instead of incident reports. But those words belonged to a different woman, in a different life. Here, she was just Zara Williams, the nurse who couldn't seem to do anything right. Of course, Dr. Reeves, she said instead, the familiar taste of swallowed pride bitter on her tongue. As Dr. Reeves walked away, Zara remained at the window, watching over the twins like a guardian angel in scrubs. She didn't know it yet, but in less than an hour, those babies would need more than medical care to survive. They would need a warrior. And despite what everyone at Metropolitan General believed about her, Zara Williams had never stopped being exactly that. The first shot shattered more than just the window of the hospital's east wing. It shattered the illusion that evil couldn't find its way into places meant for healing. Zara was adjusting Emma Morrison's feeding tube when the sound cracked through the morning air like thunder on a clear day. But this wasn't thunder. Her body knew the difference before her mind could process it, muscle memory from Kandahar flooding back in an instant. The distinctive crack of a high-powered rifle, the way the sound bounced off concrete and glass, the particular echo that meant someone was shooting to kill. What was that? Jenny's voice came from across the NICU, high and uncertain. Zara's hands stilled on the feeding tube, every nerve ending suddenly alive with a familiar electricity. She moved to the window with the fluid grace of someone who had once navigated battlefields, her eyes scanning the surrounding buildings with practiced efficiency. There, fourth floor of the parking garage across the street. A glint of metal catching the morning sun. "Everyone get down," she said, her voice carrying an authority that hadn't been there moments before. "Now." "Zara, what are you?" Dr. Reeves started to say, but her words were cut off by the second shot. This one struck the window directly in front of the NICU, spider-webbing the reinforced glass, but not breaking through. Yet, the sound that followed was worse than the gunshots. It was the sound of innocent people realizing they were prey. Screams echoed from the corridors, the sharp beeping of alarms, the thunder of running feet. But in the NICU, surrounded by the most vulnerable patients in the hospital, there was nowhere to run. "He's targeting the babies," Zara whispered, the words falling from her lips like stones into still water. She could see it now, clear as day, the angle of the shots, the positioning, the methodical way the sniper was working. This wasn't random violence. This was calculated, planned. Dr. Mitchell burst through the NICU doors, his face pale and his usual composure cracked like the window. "We need to evacuate. Security says there's a shooter in the parking garage. We need to move these babies now." "No." The word came out of Zara with such force that everyone in the room turned to stare at her. "We can't move them. Look at the angle." She pointed toward the window, her finger tracing invisible lines that only she could see. "He's got clear sight lines to all the exits on this floor. The moment we try to move these incubators, he'll have clean shots. The babies are safer here, behind cover." "What are you talking about?" Dr. Mitchell's voice cracked with stress and disbelief. "You're a nurse, not a—" The third shot cut him off, this one punching through the already weakened window. Glass showered down like deadly rain, and everyone dropped to the floor except Zara. She remained standing, her eyes fixed on the parking garage, calculating distances and wind patterns with the precision of someone who had once made such calculations for a living. 400 meters, she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. Elevated position, minimal wind. "He's good." "Zara, get down." Dr. Reeves hissed from behind an overturned cart. But Zara was somewhere else now. Her mind split between the sterile NICU and a dusty rooftop in Afghanistan, where she'd once spent 3 days waiting for a single shot that would save an entire convoy. She could feel the familiar calm settling over her. The way time seemed to slow when lives hung in the balance. "I can stop him," she said quietly. The words hung in the air like a confession. Dr. Mitchell's head popped up from behind a desk, his eyes wide with something between disbelief and hysteria. "What did you just say?" Zara turned to face him, and for the first time since she'd started working at Metropolitan General, she let him see who she really was. Not the quiet nurse who took his abuse with downcast eyes. Not the woman who apologized for existing in his pristine medical world. This was Staff Sergeant Zara Williams, 75th Ranger Regiment, with 43 confirmed kills and a Medal of Valor gathering dust in a box under her bed. "I said I can stop him." Her voice was steady as a heartbeat, calm as still water. "But I need access to the roof, and I need a rifle." The silence that followed was broken only by the soft whimpering of babies and the distant sound of sirens. Dr. Reeves slowly stood up, her coffee-stained lab coat hanging askew, her eyes searching Zara's face as if seeing her for the first time. "You're serious," she whispered. Another shot rang out, this one striking the wall just inches from where little Ethan Morrison's incubator sat. The baby's monitors began beeping frantically, his tiny body responding to the stress and chaos around him. His sister Emma's oxygen levels started dropping again, the machines that kept her alive protesting the disruption to their delicate balance. Zara looked at the twins, so small, so helpless, so completely dependent on the adults around them to keep them safe. She thought about all the times she'd been called useless, all the moments when her colleagues had made her feel like she didn't belong, like she had nothing valuable to offer. But she'd been wrong to let them define her. She'd been wrong to hide who she was. "Hospital security won't get here in time," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "SWAT is at least 20 minutes out. That sniper has a clear shot at every baby in this room, and he's not going to stop until he's made his point." She knelt down beside Emma's incubator, her hand resting gently on the clear plastic that separated her from the tiny fighter inside. "But I can end this. Right now. One shot." Dr. Mitchell's face had gone from pale to gray. "You're talking about murder." "I'm talking about saving lives." Zara stood up, her full height seeming somehow taller than it had that morning. "The same thing I've been trying to do every day since I started working here. The only difference is, this time, you might actually let me do my job." What would you do in this impossible situation? When someone you've underestimated reveals they might be the only hope, how do you respond? Let us know your thoughts. The fourth shot came then, closer than before, and in the distance, they could hear the sound of breaking glass from other parts of the hospital. The sniper was expanding his target area, and time was running out. Zara looked around the room at the faces of her colleagues, people who had spent months treating her like she was invisible, like she was nothing. Now they were looking at her like she might be everything. "So," she said quietly, "what's it going to be?" The silence stretched between them like a taut wire, ready to snap under the weight of disbelief and desperation. Dr. Mitchell's face cycled through emotions, shock, denial, and something that looked dangerously close to panic. "This is insane," he whispered, his hands shaking as he clutched his tablet like a shield. "You're a nurse. You take temperatures and change bedsheets. You can't just kill people." Zara finished for him, her voice steady as granite. "You're right. I can't. But I can stop someone who's trying to kill babies." Another shot rang out, this one from a different angle. The sniper was moving, repositioning for a better vantage point. Zara's trained ear caught the subtle difference in the sound's trajectory. He was getting closer to a direct line of sight into the NICU. "We need to call the police," Dr. Reeves said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The FBI. Someone with actual training." "I have actual training." The words came out harder than Zara intended, carrying 18 months of suppressed frustration. 8 years in the Army. 2 tours in Afghanistan. I was a designated marksman with the 75th Ranger Regiment before I ever touched a stethoscope. Dr. Mitchell let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "That's impossible." "Your resume said." "My resume said what I needed it to say to get a job in a hospital that wouldn't hire me if they knew I'd spent 8 years putting bullets in people instead of bandages on them." Zara moved to the window, staying low but positioning herself to get a better view of the parking garage. "Turns out I was wrong about that. You wouldn't hire me anyway." The bitter truth of it hung in the air like smoke. Jenny, who had been silent until now, spoke up from behind an overturned chair. The Morrison twins' parents, they're in the cafeteria. If something happens to these babies. She didn't need to finish. They all knew what she meant. The Morrisons had tried for 7 years to have children. These twins were their miracle, their everything. Emma and Ethan weren't just patients. They were someone's entire world. Look, Zara said, turning back to face the group. I know this is hard to believe. I know you think I'm just the nurse who can't do anything right. But right now, those babies have one chance, and it's me. Dr. Mitchell shook his head violently. Even if what you're saying is true, and I'm not saying I believe it, we can't just let you go up there and start shooting. There are protocols, procedures. We could all lose our licenses. And if we don't act, those babies could lose their lives. Zara's voice carried a weight that made everyone in the room look at her differently. This wasn't the quiet, apologetic woman they'd grown accustomed to dismissing. This was someone else entirely. Someone who spoke with the authority of experience and the gravity of someone who had made life-and-death decisions before. Dr. Reeves slowly stood up, her eyes never leaving Zara's face. "Show me," she said quietly. "Patricia, what are you doing?" Dr. Mitchell hissed. "Show me your hands," Dr. Reeves continued, ignoring him. "If you're really who you say you are, show me." Zara extended her hands, palms up. They were steady as stone, not even the slightest tremor despite the chaos around them. Dr. Reeves studied them for a long moment, then looked into Zara's eyes. "I've seen a lot of hands in my career," she said slowly. "Surgeons' hands. Hands that save lives. But I've never seen hands that steady under this kind of pressure. Not from someone who's just a nurse." "I am just a nurse," Zara said firmly. "But I'm also a soldier. And right now these babies need both." The sound of footsteps in the corridor made them all freeze. Security guards rushed past the NICU doors, their radios crackling with urgent communications. Through the static, they could make out fragments. Multiple casualties in the East Wing. Sniper confirmed. Requesting immediate backup. Dr. Mitchell's face crumpled. "People are dying. More people will die if we don't act." Zara moved closer to him, her voice gentle but insistent. "I know you don't trust me. I know you think I'm incompetent. But I'm asking you to look past that for 5 minutes. Look at those babies and tell me you're willing to bet their lives on SWAT getting here in time." Emma Morrison's monitors began beeping more frantically. The stress of the situation was affecting her already fragile respiratory system. Her tiny chest rose and fell with increasing difficulty, each breath a struggle that seemed to echo the larger battle being fought around her. "She's going into distress," Jenny said, moving toward the incubator despite the danger. "Stay low," Zara commanded, and something in her tone made Jenny immediately drop to a crouch. "He's got visual on that whole section." Dr. Mitchell stared at Zara, as if seeing her for the first time. "How do you know that?" "Because I know how snipers think. I know how they position themselves, how they calculate angles, how they choose targets." Zara's voice was matter-of-fact, professional. "This isn't random, Dr. Mitchell. He's not just shooting at the hospital. He's specifically targeting the pediatric ward. The NICU. He wants to kill children." The words hit like physical blows. Dr. Reeves sank back down behind the cart, her face pale. "Why would someone do that?" "I don't know why, and right now it doesn't matter." Zara checked her watch, a military-issue timepiece that none of them had ever noticed before. "What matters is that he's got the high ground, superior firepower, and a clear field of fire. In about 10 minutes, he's going to have worked his way through enough of the window to start picking off incubators one by one." Another shot, closer this time. A chunk of concrete exploded from the wall near the ceiling, raining dust down on the babies below. Emma's oxygen saturation dropped another point. "The hospital's security team isn't trained for this," Zara continued. "They're good people, but they're not soldiers. They're going to get themselves killed trying to rush a trained sniper, and then there'll be no one left to protect these babies." Dr. Mitchell was quiet for a long moment, his eyes moving between Zara and the twins. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. "What would you need?" "Access to the roof. A rifle, preferably something with decent range and accuracy. And about 5 minutes to remember how to be someone I spent 2 years trying to forget." "We don't have rifles just lying around the hospital," Dr. Reeves said. "Security does. They've got a lockbox in the main office with emergency equipment." Zara had noticed it during her first week, a detail that had seemed unimportant at the time. Standard protocol for hospitals in urban areas after September 11th. The room fell silent except for the soft beeping of monitors and the distant sound of sirens. Everyone was looking at her now, really looking at her, and Zara could see the moment when their perception shifted. She was no longer the incompetent nurse they'd dismissed. She was no longer useless. She was their only hope. But hope, Zara knew from experience, was a dangerous thing to carry into battle. The lockdown alarm began wailing through the hospital corridors like a mechanical banshee, sealing them all inside with their fears and impossible choices. Red lights flashed in the hallways, and the electronic locks on all exterior doors engaged with a series of metallic clicks that sounded like a prison closing. "Great," Dr. Mitchell muttered, his sarcasm barely masking his terror. "Now we're trapped in here with a sniper outside and a..." He gestured vaguely at Zara, as if he still couldn't quite process what she'd told them. "A what?" Zara asked quietly, her eyes never leaving the parking garage where she could still see the occasional glint of the sniper's scope. "Say it, Dr. Mitchell. What am I?" He opened his mouth, then closed it, the words seeming to stick in his throat like broken glass. The NICU's intercom crackled to life, filled with static and panic. All units, this is command. We have confirmed casualties in the East Wing. Repeat, we have casualties. All medical personnel are to shelter in place until further notice. Do not attempt to evacuate patients." Dr. Reeves reached for the intercom button. "Command, this is Dr. Reeves in the NICU. We have a direct line of sight to the shooter's position. Our windows are compromised, and we have 12 premature infants who..." "Dr. Reeves, maintain radio silence. We're tracking your location. SWAT is en route, ETA 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Zara closed her eyes and did the math. At the sniper's current rate of fire, testing angles and weakening the window structure, he'd have a clear shot into the NICU in less than 10. The babies would be sitting ducks. "We don't have 15 minutes, she said aloud. Jenny, who had been quietly checking on the other babies, looked up with tears in her eyes. "Baby Morrison, Emma, her stats are getting worse. The stress is affecting her breathing. If we can't stabilize the environment..." She didn't need to finish. They all understood. Emma Morrison was fighting two battles now, one against her premature lungs and another against the chaos that surrounded her. She was losing both. Dr. Mitchell slumped against the wall, his pristine white coat now wrinkled and stained with dust from the concrete debris. "This is insane. All of it. 6 hours ago, my biggest problem was the quarterly budget review, and now I'm supposed to trust my career, hell, my life, to someone who..." He trailed off, looking at Zara with something that might have been the beginning of understanding. "Someone who what?" Zara pressed. "Someone who's been trying to tell you for 18 months that she's more than what you see. Someone who's been watching you dismiss her every single day while she kept her mouth shut and did her job." The words came out harder than she'd intended, carrying the weight of every slight, every condescending comment, every moment when she'd been made to feel invisible. But there was something else in her voice, too, a vulnerability that none of them had ever heard before. "You want to know the truth?" Zara continued, moving away from the window to face them all. "I didn't come here to hide from who I was. I came here to become someone better. Someone who saves lives instead of taking them. Someone who heals instead of hurts." She gestured toward the babies around them, her voice softening. "These little fighters, they don't care about my past. They don't care that I used to carry a rifle instead of a stethoscope. All they care about is that someone's here to take care of them, to protect them." Dr. Reeves was studying Zara with the same intensity she usually reserved for complex medical cases. "Why nursing?" she asked quietly. "If you were military, decorated military, from the sound of it, why not become a doctor? Or stay in the service?" The question hit deeper than Zara had expected. She was quiet for a long moment, listening to the soft beeping of the monitors, the gentle whoosh of the ventilators keeping the smallest babies alive. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I got tired of watching people die when I could have saved them if I'd just known more. If I'd been trained to heal instead of..." She swallowed hard. "There was this kid in Kandahar. Couldn't have been more than 16. Caught in crossfire during a firefight. I had him in my scope for maybe 30 seconds before the medics got to him, and I kept thinking, if I knew how to stop the bleeding, if I knew how to keep him breathing, maybe he'd make it home to his family." The NICU fell silent except for the mechanical sounds of life support. Even Dr. Mitchell had stopped fidgeting with his tablet. "He didn't make it," Zara continued. "And I realized that all my training, all my skills, they were about ending things. I wanted to learn how to begin them, how to give people second chances instead of taking away their last ones. Jenny wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. That's beautiful, she whispered. It's also why I can't let that sniper kill these babies. Zara's voice grew stronger, more determined. I've spent 2 years learning how to save lives. But right now, the only way to save these lives is to use skills I hoped I'd never need again. Another shot rang out, this one striking the window frame directly. The remaining glass shuddered, spiderwebbing further. They were running out of time. Dr. Mitchell looked up from his tablet, his face pale but resolute. The security office, he said quietly. I have access codes. Administrative override. David, what are you saying? Dr. Reeves asked. I'm saying that maybe I've been wrong about a lot of things. He looked directly at Zara for the first time in months without condescension or dismissal. If you're really who you say you are, if you can really do what you say you can do. I can, Zara said simply. But I need you to trust me. All of you. Not because you suddenly believe I'm competent, but because those babies deserve every chance we can give them. The intercom crackled again. All units, be advised, we have reports of the shooter changing positions. Repeat, shooter is mobile and may be attempting to gain access to the building. Dr. Reeves stood up slowly, her decision written across her face. Jenny, stay with the babies. Monitor Emma closely. If her oxygen drops any further, we'll need to intubate. She turned to Dr. Mitchell. David, you're with me. We're going to get Zara what she needs. Patricia. No. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had spent 20 years making life and death decisions. I've watched this woman work for 18 months. I've seen how she handles emergencies, how she anticipates problems before they happen, how she never loses her cool under pressure. Maybe we were all too blind to see what was right in front of us. She looked at Zara with something that might have been respect. Maybe it's time we started paying attention. Have you ever had to trust someone you previously doubted in a crisis situation? Sometimes our biggest heroes come from the most unexpected places. What do you think makes someone truly trustworthy when everything is on the line? Outside, the sniper fired again, and this time they could hear the sound of glass finally giving way somewhere in the building. Time was running out, and they all knew it. But for the first time since the shooting started, Zara wasn't facing the crisis alone. Outside, the sniper fired again, and this time they could hear the sound of glass finally giving way somewhere in the building. Time was running out, and they all knew it. But for the first time since the shooting started, Zara wasn't. The security office felt like a tomb, its fluorescent lights flickering ominously as Dr. Mitchell's trembling fingers worked the electronic keypad. The distant sound of gunfire had grown more sporadic, but more precise. The sniper was no longer testing angles. He was choosing targets. There, Dr. Mitchell whispered as the heavy steel cabinet clicked open. Inside, mounted in foam cutouts like surgical instruments, were 2 rifles and a collection of tactical equipment that looked alien in the sterile hospital environment. Zara stepped forward and lifted one of the rifles, a Remington 700 with a decent scope. Not military grade, but it would do. Her hands moved over the weapon with the fluid familiarity of muscle memory, checking the action, testing the trigger pull, examining the scope mounts with the practiced eye of someone who had once trusted her life to such details. Jesus, Dr. Mitchell breathed, watching her. You really do know what you're doing. Staff Sergeant Zara Williams, 75th Ranger Regiment, 2nd Battalion. The words came out like a recitation, formal and precise. Designated marksman, counter-sniper specialist. 43 confirmed kills over 2 tours. She paused, her hands stilling on the rifle. And one that I missed. Dr. Reeves, who had been standing guard at the door, turned around. What do you mean? Zara was quiet for a long moment, her eyes distant. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of old ghosts. Helmand Province, 2019. We got intel about a Taliban sniper who'd been picking off civilians in a market district. Women, children, anyone who dared to venture out for food or medicine. She began loading the rifle with practiced efficiency, each movement precise and economical. I had him in my sights for 3 days. Perfect shot, clear line of sight, minimal wind. But every time I was about to take the shot, there were civilians in the background. Kids playing. Mothers shopping. I couldn't risk it. Dr. Mitchell leaned against the wall, his face pale. What happened? On the 4th day, he got tired of waiting. Opened fire on a school. Zara's voice was steady, but her knuckles were white where she gripped the rifle. Killed 6 children and 2 teachers before I finally took the shot. 6 kids who might still be alive if I'd been willing to risk civilian casualties on day 1. The security office fell silent, except for the hum of the ventilation system and the distant wail of sirens. Dr. Reeves moved closer, her medical training recognizing the signs of old trauma in Zara's posture. In the careful way she held herself together. "That's why you left the military," she said softly. "It wasn't a question. That's why I became a nurse." Zara finished loading the rifle and slung it over her shoulder. "I figured if I was going to carry the weight of those 6 kids for the rest of my life, the least I could do was try to save 6 more. Then 6 more after that. Keep saving until maybe the scales balanced out." Dr. Mitchell was staring at her with something approaching awe. "How many have you saved? Here, I mean, as a nurse." Zara almost smiled. "You'd have to ask someone who actually pays attention to my work." The words stung, and Dr. Mitchell flinched as if she'd slapped him. "Zara, forget it." She moved toward the door, then stopped. "Actually, no. Don't forget it. Remember it. Remember that the woman you've been calling useless for 18 months has been fighting to save lives every single day, just like you. The only difference is, I've been doing it while you've been trying to convince me I don't belong here." She turned back to face him, and for the first time, Dr. Mitchell saw past the quiet exterior to the steel underneath. "You want to know how many lives I've saved as a nurse? Ask Jenny about the night shift when little Marcus Chun went into cardiac arrest, and I kept him alive for 40 minutes until the crash team arrived. Ask Dr. Patterson about the premature triplets I caught showing signs of sepsis before anyone else noticed. Ask the Morrison family about the night I spent 12 hours straight monitoring Emma's breathing when the ventilator malfunctioned." Dr. Reeves was nodding slowly. "I remember that night. You never left her side. Because that's what you do," Zara said simply. "You don't leave. You don't give up. You fight for every breath, every heartbeat, every chance." She hefted the rifle. Whether you're using a stethoscope or a scope. The intercom in the security office crackled to life. All units, we have visual confirmation of the shooter. Suspect is a white male, approximately 35 years old, wearing tactical gear. He appears to be moving toward the main building. Repeat, shooter is attempting to gain entry to the hospital. Dr. Mitchell's face went white. "He's coming inside." "No," Zara said, checking the rifle's scope one final time. "He's not." She moved toward the door, but Dr. Reeves caught her arm. "Wait. There's something else, isn't there? Something you're not telling us." Zara paused, her hand on the door handle. For a moment, she looked like she might deflect, might keep her secrets locked away like she had for the past 18 months. But then she turned back, and they could see the weight of whatever she was carrying. "The sniper out there," she said quietly. "The way he's positioned, the methodical approach, the specific targeting of the pediatric ward, it's not random. It's personal." "What do you mean?" Dr. Mitchell asked. "I mean someone with that level of training, that level of precision, doesn't just wake up one morning and decide to shoot up a hospital. This is planned, calculated. He's here for a reason." Zara's voice grew harder. "And I think that reason might be me." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Dr. Reeves stepped back, her eyes wide. "You think he's here for you?" "I think he's here because of what I represent. A soldier who walked away. Someone who chose healing over killing." Zara's grip tightened on the rifle. "There are people who see that as betrayal, as weakness." Dr. Mitchell was shaking his head. "That's impossible. How would anyone even know you're here? Military records aren't as private as you'd think. And there are people, former colleagues, contractors, others, who keep track of where soldiers end up after they leave the service." Zara's voice was grim. "Especially soldiers who were good at what they did." Another burst of gunfire, closer now. Through the security office's small window, they could see muzzle flashes from the parking garage. The sniper was laying down covering fire, preparing to move. Facing the crisis alone. "He's making his approach," Zara said, her training taking over. "Which means I need to get to the roof now, before he gets close enough to storm the building." She started toward the door again, but this time it was Dr. Mitchell who stopped her. "Zara, wait." His voice was different now, softer, uncertain. "If this is about you, if he's here because of who you are, then maybe you should let someone else handle this. The police, SWAT. There is no one else." Zara turned to face him one final time. "And even if there was, those babies upstairs don't have time to wait for backup. Emma Morrison is fighting for every breath. Her brother is depending on the machines keeping him alive. All of them are. She looked between Dr. Mitchell and Dr. Reeves, these colleagues who had spent months making her feel invisible, who were now seeing her clearly for the first time. "I didn't come here to hide from who I was," she said. "I came here to become who I was meant to be. Someone who protects the innocent. Someone who stands between the darkness and the light." She shouldered the rifle and opened the door. "Today, that means being both a nurse and a soldier. And I'm okay with that." As she stepped into the corridor, Dr. Mitchell called after her. "Zara." She turned back. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I'm sorry. For everything. You were never useless. I was just too blind to see it." Zara nodded once, then disappeared into the hallway, leaving them with the weight of 18 months of missed opportunities and the terrible understanding that they might never get the chance to make things right. The hospital's roof access was a narrow stairwell that smelled of disinfectant and old concrete, each step echoing like a countdown. But Zara wasn't alone. Despite her protests, Dr. Reeves had insisted on coming with her, claiming someone needed to maintain radio contact with the NICU. Dr. Mitchell had stayed behind with Jenny to monitor the babies, but not before pressing a small medical kit into Zara's hands. "Just in case," he'd said, and for the first time in 18 months, his eyes had held something other than dismissal. Now, as they climbed toward the roof, Dr. Reeves broke the tense silence. "Tell me about the good ones," she said quietly. "What?" "The lives you saved. In the military. You told us about the one you missed, but there had to be good ones too. Moments when your skills made the difference." Zara paused on the landing, adjusting the rifle strap on her shoulder. It was an unexpected question, and for a moment she wasn't sure how to answer. She'd spent so long focusing on her failures, on the weight of what she'd done wrong, that she'd almost forgotten there had been victories too. "There was a convoy," she said finally, continuing up the stairs. "Ambushed outside Kandahar. 3 vehicles, 12 soldiers pinned down by sniper fire from a compound about 600 meters out. The enemy had them completely trapped. Every time someone tried to move, they'd get picked off." Dr. Reeves followed close behind, her breathing slightly labored from the climb. "What did you do?" "I climbed to the highest point I could find, an old water tower that was probably older than both of us combined. Took me 40 minutes to get into position, and by then 2 more soldiers had been hit." Zara's voice grew steadier as she remembered. "But I had the angle. Clear line of sight to the sniper's nest." They reached the roof access door, and Zara paused with her hand on the handle. "1 shot. Clean kill." The convoy was able to extract, and all 12 soldiers made it home to their families. "That's beautiful," Dr. Reeves said softly. "It was necessary." Zara pushed open the door, and they stepped onto the hospital roof. The morning air was crisp and clear, offering an unobstructed view of the parking garage where the sniper had positioned himself. "But I used to think that was enough. That doing what was necessary was the same as doing what was right." She moved to the edge of the roof, staying low, and began setting up her position. The rifle felt familiar in her hands, like greeting an old friend she'd hoped never to see again. Dr. Reeves crouched beside her, her medical bag clutched tightly against her chest. "What changed your mind?" Dr. Reeves asked. Zara was quiet for a long moment, adjusting the scope and calculating wind patterns. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Emma Morrison. The baby. All of them. Every baby I've taken care of in the NICU. Every time I watch one of those little fighters take their first breath without a ventilator, every time I see parents hold their child for the first time, that's when I realized the difference." Zara's hands stilled on the rifle. Necessary is about ending things. Right is about beginning them. Through the scope, she could see the sniper's position clearly now. He was good, well-concealed, disciplined, patient. But he'd made one mistake. He'd chosen to threaten the one thing Zara would die to protect. "Can you see him?" Dr. Reeves whispered. "I can see him." Zara's voice was calm, professional. "He's repositioning for a final assault on the building. Probably planning to breach through the east entrance and work his way up to the NICU." Dr. Reeves activated her radio. "Jenny, this is Patricia. How are the babies?" Jenny's voice crackled through the static, tight with stress. "Emma's oxygen levels are still dropping. Her heart rate is elevated. The stress is really affecting her. And Dr. Mitchell thinks Ethan might be showing early signs of respiratory distress too." "Copy that. We're in position. Just hold on a little longer." Zara closed her eyes for a moment, centering herself the way she'd been taught years ago in sniper school. When she opened them again, she was no longer Zara Williams, the nurse. She was Staff Sergeant Williams, and she had a job to do. "Patricia," she said quietly, "I need you to know something." "What?" "If this goes wrong, if I miss, or if there are more shooters we don't know about, I need you to get those babies out of there. Don't wait for SWAT, don't wait for backup. Just get them to safety." Dr. Reeves was quiet for a moment. "And if it goes right?" Zara almost smiled. "If it goes right, then maybe you'll finally understand why I became a nurse instead of staying a soldier." She settled into position, her breathing slowing, her heart rate dropping into the zone she remembered from a dozen rooftops in a dozen different countries. Through the scope, she could see the sniper clearly now. A man in tactical gear, professional in his movements, deadly in his intent. But there was something else. Something that made her pause. "He's young," she murmured. "What?" "The sniper. He's young. Maybe mid-20s. Zara's voice carried a note of sadness. "Probably military trained, probably thinks he's fighting for something important." Dr. Reeves looked at her with concern. "Does that change anything?" Zara was quiet for a long moment, remembering another young man in another scope, in a market in Kandahar where children played and mothers shopped. She thought about the weight of choices, about the difference between necessary and right, about the babies downstairs who were depending on her to make the hardest decision of all. "No," she said finally. "It doesn't change anything, but it makes it harder." Her radio crackled. Dr. Mitchell's voice came through, strained with panic. "Zara, Patricia, he's moving. The sniper is leaving his position. I think he's heading for the building." Through her scope, Zara watched as the young man in tactical gear began his descent from the parking garage. He moved with military precision, covering ground quickly while maintaining situational awareness. In less than 2 minutes, he'd be at the hospital's entrance. "This is it," she whispered. Dr. Reeves reached out and touched her shoulder. "Zara." "Yeah. For what it's worth, I think you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Doing exactly what you're supposed to do." Zara looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something she'd never seen before in a colleague's eyes. Not pity, not condescension, not dismissal. Respect. Trust. Maybe even friendship. "Thank you," she said simply. Then she turned back to the scope, settled her breathing, and prepared to do what she'd hoped she'd never have to do again. In moments of crisis, we often discover who people really are beneath the surface. Have you ever been surprised by someone's hidden strength or unexpected courage? Sometimes the people we overlook are exactly the ones we need most. Below them, the sniper reached the hospital entrance. Time was running out, and Zara knew that in the next few minutes, everything would change. One way or another. The shot that changed everything wasn't the one Zara took. It was the one she couldn't. Through her scope, she watched the sniper reach the hospital's main entrance, his movements fluid and purposeful. Her finger rested on the trigger, her breathing controlled, her heart rate steady. This was the moment she'd been preparing for, the clean shot that would end the threat and save the babies. But as the crosshairs settled on the young man's center mass, something made her hesitate. He stopped. Just stopped, right there in the open, and pulled off his tactical helmet. For the first time, Zara could see his face clearly through the scope. He was younger than she'd thought, maybe 22, 23 at most. And he was crying. "What's wrong?" Dr. Reeves whispered, sensing her hesitation. Zara's voice caught in her throat. "He's just a kid." The young man stood there for a long moment, his rifle lowered, his face turned up toward the hospital windows. Even from this distance, Zara could see the anguish written across his features. This wasn't the cold, calculated expression of a professional killer. This was the face of someone breaking apart. "Zara, you have to take the shot," Dr. Reeves urged. "He's at the entrance. In 30 seconds, he'll be inside." But Zara couldn't pull the trigger. Something about the young man's posture, the way he held himself, reminded her too much of herself in those dark months after Kandahar. The weight of impossible choices, the crushing burden of lives lost and saved, the terrible arithmetic of war that never quite balanced out. Her radio crackled. Dr. Mitchell's voice, tight with panic. "He's inside. The sniper is inside the building." "Damn it," Zara breathed, lifting her eye from the scope. She'd missed her chance, and now the threat was inside the hospital, moving toward the NICU, toward the babies she'd sworn to protect. "We have to get back down there," Dr. Reeves said, already moving toward the roof access door. But Zara remained frozen in position, staring at the empty entrance where the young man had disappeared. In that moment of hesitation, she'd failed everyone, the babies, her colleagues, herself. The old familiar weight of failure settled on her shoulders like a lead blanket. "I can't do this," she whispered. Dr. Reeves stopped and turned back. "What?" "I can't do this. I thought I could, but I can't." Zara's hands were shaking now, the rifle suddenly feeling impossibly heavy. "I had him. Perfect shot, clear line of sight, and I froze. Just like Kandahar. Just like those 6 kids who died because I couldn't pull the trigger when it mattered. Zara, listen to me." "No." The word came out harsher than she'd intended, carrying 18 months of suppressed pain and self-doubt. "You listen to me. I'm not a hero. I'm not some secret weapon who's going to save the day. I'm just a broken soldier who couldn't hack it in the real world and thought she could hide in a hospital." Dr. Reeves moved closer, her voice gentle but firm. "That's not true, isn't it?" Zara laughed bitterly. "You want to know why I really left the military? It wasn't just because of those kids in Kandahar. It was because I realized I was a coward. When it really mattered, when lives were on the line, I couldn't do what needed to be done." The radio crackled again. Jenny's voice, barely controlled. "He's on the 3rd floor. Security is trying to stop him, but..." The transmission cut off in a burst of static and what sounded like gunfire. "The babies," Dr. Reeves breathed. Zara closed her eyes, and for a moment she was back in that market in Kandahar, watching children play while a sniper's crosshairs danced over their heads. She could hear her commanding officer's voice. "Take the shot, Williams. That's an order." She could feel the weight of the rifle, the pressure of the trigger, the terrible mathematics of acceptable casualties. "I can't," she whispered again. "I can't be responsible for another life. I can't carry that weight anymore." Dr. Reeves knelt beside her, her hand resting gently on Zara's shoulder. "Then don't." "What?" "Don't be responsible for his life. Be responsible for theirs." Dr. Reeves pointed toward the hospital below them, toward the NICU where 12 premature babies lay helpless in their incubators. "Be responsible for Emma Morrison, who's fighting for every breath. For her brother Ethan. For all of them." Zara opened her eyes, and through the scope she could see the NICU windows, spiderwebbed with cracks but still intact. Still protecting the most vulnerable patients in the hospital. "You said you became a nurse to save lives," Dr. Reeves continued. "Well, here's your chance. Not as a soldier, not as someone carrying the weight of past mistakes, but as a nurse. As someone who swore an oath to protect the innocent." The radio crackled once more. Dr. Mitchell's voice desperate. "He's in the stairwell. 4th floor. Zara, Patricia, where are you?" Zara looked at the rifle in her hands, then at Dr. Reeves, then back toward the hospital where her colleagues and patients were depending on her. The weight of choice pressed down on her like a physical thing, threatening to crush her under its enormity. "What if I miss?" she whispered. "What if I freeze again?" "Then you miss," Dr. Reeves said simply. "But at least you'll have tried. At least you'll have fought for them." From somewhere deep in the hospital came the sound of breaking glass, followed by screams. The young sniper was getting closer to the NICU, closer to the babies who couldn't run, couldn't hide, couldn't protect themselves. Zara thought about Emma Morrison, so small and fragile, fighting for every breath. She thought about her brother Ethan, about all the other babies in the NICU who had never asked to be born into a world where people with guns could threaten their lives before they'd even had a chance to live them. She thought about the oath she'd taken as a nurse. First, do no harm. But sometimes, she realized, doing no harm meant being willing to cause it. "I need to get closer," she said suddenly, her voice stronger than it had been moments before. "The angle's wrong from here. If he's inside the building, I need to be inside too." Dr. Reeves stared at her. "That's suicide. You'll be walking into his line of fire." "Maybe." Zara stood up, slinging the rifle over her shoulder. "But those babies don't have anyone else. And I'd rather die trying to save them than live knowing I let them die because I was too scared to act." She started toward the roof access door, then paused and turned back to Dr. Reeves. "Patricia." "Yeah. If this goes wrong, if I don't make it, tell Dr. Mitchell something for me." "What?" Zara's voice was quiet but steady. "Tell him he was right. I was useless. But only because I let myself be." Then she disappeared through the door, leaving Dr. Reeves alone on the roof with the weight of what was about to happen and the terrible understanding that they might all be about to lose the one person who could save them. In the distance, sirens wailed like morning songs, but they were still too far away to matter. Time was running out, and Zara Williams was walking into the darkness alone. The hospital corridors had become a maze of shadows and silence, broken only by the distant sound of Zara's footsteps and the mechanical hum of life support systems that continued their work regardless of the chaos around them. She moved through the building like a ghost, the rifle in her hands feeling both foreign and familiar, a reminder of who she used to be and who she was trying not to become again. The fourth floor was eerily quiet. Too quiet. Zara pressed herself against the wall outside the stairwell, listening. Her military training kicked in automatically. Assess the situation, identify threats, plan your approach. But underneath the tactical thinking was something else, something that hadn't been there during her tours in Afghanistan. The absolute certainty that failure wasn't an option. These weren't enemy combatants or strategic targets. These were babies. Her babies, in a way that went deeper than professional responsibility. For 18 months, she'd watched over them, fought for them, celebrated their victories, and mourned their losses. They were the reason she'd left the military, the reason she'd chosen healing over killing. Now, to save them, she might have to kill again. Her radio crackled softly. Dr. Mitchell's voice, barely a whisper. "Zara, can you hear me?" She pressed the transmit button once. A single click that meant yes, but stay quiet. "He's on the 5th floor now, moving toward the NICU. Jenny's with the babies, but..." His voice broke slightly. "Emma's crashing. Her oxygen levels are critical. We need to get her to surgery, but we can't move her with him up there." Zara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her. Emma Morrison, the tiny fighter who'd been struggling since birth, was dying while a gunman stalked the halls above her. Every second of delay brought her closer to losing both battles, the one against her premature lungs and the one against the violence that surrounded her. She keyed the radio twice. Message received, understood. Then she began to climb. The 5th floor was a different world. Emergency lighting cast everything in harsh red shadows, and the smell of fear seemed to hang in the air like smoke. Zara moved carefully, her bare feet silent on the polished floor, the rifle held in a low, ready position that felt as natural as breathing. She could hear him before she saw him. The soft scrape of tactical boots on linoleum, the quiet metallic sounds of someone checking their weapon. He was close to the NICU now, maybe 50 feet from the doors that separated him from 12 helpless babies. Zara rounded the corner and saw him. He was standing at the far end of the corridor, his back to her, staring through the reinforced glass windows of the NICU. Even from behind, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he held his rifle like it was the only thing keeping him upright. He was talking to himself, or maybe to someone on a radio, his voice too low for her to make out the words. This was it. The moment she'd been dreading and preparing for. Clean shot, clear line of sight, no civilians in the background. Everything her training had taught her said to take the shot now, before he could turn around, before he could become a threat to her or anyone else. But something made her hesitate. Maybe it was the way he stood there, motionless, as if he was gathering courage for something terrible. Maybe it was the memory of her own dark moments, when the weight of what she'd done and seen had nearly crushed her. Or maybe it was simply the nurse in her, the part that had sworn to heal rather than harm, speaking louder than the soldier she used to be. "Hey," she called out softly. The young man spun around, his rifle coming up in a smooth, practiced motion. For a split second, they faced each other across the corridor. Two soldiers, two people carrying weapons they'd hoped never to use again, two souls balanced on the knife's edge between salvation and damnation. Up close, he looked even younger than she'd thought. His face was streaked with tears, his eyes red-rimmed and desperate. This wasn't a hardened killer or a terrorist. This was a broken kid with a gun, and that somehow made it worse. "Don't," he said, his voice cracking. "Don't try to stop me." "I'm not here to stop you," Zara said quietly, keeping her rifle lowered. "I'm here to understand." He laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Understand? You want to understand?" He gestured toward the NICU with his free hand. "My daughter was in there. 3 months ago. Born at 26 weeks, just like those babies in there now." Zara's heart clenched. What happened to her? "She died." The words came out flat, emotionless, as if he'd said them so many times they'd lost all meaning. Infection. Could have been prevented if they'd caught it sooner, if they'd paid attention, if they'd cared enough to. His voice broke completely. "I'm sorry," Zara said, and meant it. "I'm so sorry for your loss." "Are you?" His grip tightened on his rifle. "Because you work here, don't you? You're one of them. One of the people who let her die." I am. Zara took a small step forward, her hands still visible, her weapons still lowered. I work in the NICU. I take care of babies like your daughter. And you're right, sometimes we fail. Sometimes we lose them, and it breaks our hearts every single time. Bullshit. But there was less conviction in his voice now, more pain than anger. Her name was Lily, Zara said quietly. Lily Chun. Born February 15th, 26 weeks, 2 days. She fought for 3 weeks before the infection took her. I was there when she died. The young man's face went white. How do you? Because I held her when she passed. Because I was the one who had to tell her parents that we'd done everything we could, but sometimes everything isn't enough. Zara's voice was steady, but tears were running down her cheeks. Because I've been carrying the weight of her death for 3 months, wondering if there was something more I could have done, some sign I missed, some way I could have saved her. The rifle in his hands began to shake. She was everything. She was supposed to be our miracle baby. We tried for 7 years, went through 4 miscarriages, and finally we had her. And then you people just let her die. We didn't let her die, Zara said gently. We fought for her. Every nurse, every doctor, every person in that NICU fought for Lily like she was our own child. But sometimes, no matter how hard we fight, we lose. And when we do, it destroys us too. She took another step forward. What's your name? Marcus, he whispered. Marcus, I know you're in pain. I know you want someone to blame, someone to punish for what happened to Lily. But those babies in there, they're not responsible for your daughter's death. They're just fighting the same fight she fought, hoping for the same miracle you hoped for. Marcus was crying openly now, his rifle wavering between pointing at Zara and pointing at the floor. I just want her back. I just want my little girl back. I know, Zara said, but killing those babies won't bring her back. It'll just create more parents like you, more people carrying the weight of loss they can't bear. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who are hurting the most themselves. How do we find compassion for those who threaten what we love? What would you do in this impossible situation? Behind the NICU doors, an alarm began beeping frantically. Emma Morrison was crashing, her tiny body finally succumbing to the stress and trauma of the day. Time was running out for everyone. Marcus, Zara said urgently, I need to get in there. There's a baby who's dying, and I might be the only one who can save her. Please, let me do what I couldn't do for Lily. Let me save this one. Marcus looked at her, then at the NICU, then back at her. In his eyes, she could see the moment when grief and rage gave way to something else. A flicker of the man he'd been before loss had broken him. Slowly, very slowly, he lowered his rifle. Okay, he whispered. Okay. The NICU doors opened like the gates of heaven, and Zara rushed through them with Marcus following close behind, his rifle now slung over his shoulder, his hands empty and shaking. The scene inside was controlled chaos. Jenny working frantically over Emma Morrison's incubator while Dr. Mitchell tried to stabilize her brother Ethan, whose own monitors had begun showing signs of distress. Thank God, Dr. Mitchell breathed when he saw Zara. Then his eyes fell on Marcus, and his face went pale. Zara, what? He's not a threat, Zara said quickly, moving to Emma's incubator. He's a father who lost his daughter. Marcus, this is Dr. Mitchell. Dr. Mitchell, Marcus Chun, Lily's father. The recognition hit Dr. Mitchell like a physical blow. He'd been there too, had fought alongside Zara to save little Lily Chun, had felt the same crushing weight of failure when they'd lost her. Now, looking at the broken man who had terrorized their hospital, he saw not a monster, but a mirror of his own grief. Emma's in full respiratory failure, Jenny reported, her voice tight with professional control. Her lungs are shutting down. We need to intubate now, but her airways are so small. I've got it, Zara said, her hands already moving with the practiced precision that had kept dozens of premature babies alive over the past 18 months. Marcus, I need you to help me. Hold this light steady. Without hesitation, Marcus stepped forward, his large hands surprisingly gentle as he positioned the small surgical light. For a moment, the man who had come here to take lives was helping to save one instead. Zara worked with the focused intensity that had made her a legendary sniper, but now channeled into healing instead of killing. Her hands were steady as stone as she guided the tiny breathing tube into Emma's impossibly small airway, her movements economical and precise. This was what she'd trained for, what she'd left the military to do, to give life instead of taking it. There, she whispered as Emma's oxygen levels began to stabilize. Come on, little fighter. Breathe for me. As if responding to her voice, Emma's chest began to rise and fall more steadily. Her monitors stopped their frantic beeping, settling into the rhythmic sounds of a baby who was going to live. Dr. Reeves burst through the NICU doors, having run down from the roof when she heard the all clear over the radio. She stopped short when she saw Marcus, her hand instinctively moving toward the emergency alarm, but Zara shook her head. "It's over," Zara said simply. "It's all over." Marcus was staring at Emma Morrison with tears streaming down his face. "She's so small," he whispered. "Just like Lily was." "But she's strong," Zara said gently. "Just like Lily was. Your daughter fought for 3 weeks, Marcus. 3 weeks of pure courage and determination. She was a warrior, just like this little one. Marcus's voice broke. "I almost killed her. I almost killed all of them." "But you didn't," Dr. Mitchell said quietly, moving to stand beside them. "When it mattered most, when you had the choice between grief and grace, you chose grace." The sound of footsteps in the corridor announced the arrival of SWAT team members, their tactical gear and weapons a stark contrast to the gentle beeping of the NICU monitors. But when they saw Marcus standing peacefully among the medical staff, helping to care for the babies he'd come to harm, they lowered their weapons. "Sir, we need you to come with us," the team leader said, not unkindly. Marcus nodded, understanding. He looked one last time at Emma Morrison, then at Zara. Will you take care of her? The way you tried to take care of Lily." "I promise," Zara said. "I'll watch over her like she's my own." As the SWAT team led Marcus away, he paused at the NICU doors. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice carrying the weight of genuine remorse. "I'm so sorry for what I almost did." "We know," Dr. Reeves said softly. "And we forgive you." After he was gone, the NICU fell into a different kind of silence, not the tense quiet of crisis, but the peaceful hush of healing. Emma Morrison continued to breathe steadily, her tiny chest rising and falling with mechanical precision. Her brother Ethan had stabilized as well, his monitors showing strong, steady vital signs. Dr. Mitchell approached Zara, who was still standing beside Emma's incubator, her hand resting gently on the clear plastic that separated her from the baby she'd just saved. "Zara," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology. A big one." She looked up at him, and for the first time in 18 months, there was no defensiveness in her posture, no bracing for the next slight or dismissal. "You don't owe me anything, Dr. Mitchell." "Yes, I do." He took a deep breath. "I've spent 18 months treating you like you were incompetent, like you didn't belong here. I was wrong. About everything." "You were scared," Zara said simply. "We all were. Scared of what we didn't understand, scared of admitting that maybe we didn't know everything about the people around us." Dr. Reeves joined them, her face still flushed from the adrenaline of the past hour. "What you did today, both with the crisis and with Marcus, that wasn't just good nursing. That was extraordinary." "It was just doing my job," Zara replied. "The job I came here to do. Taking care of people who need help, whether they're babies who can't breathe or fathers who can't cope with loss." Jenny, who had been quietly checking on the other babies, looked up with tears in her eyes. "I've worked in this NICU for 5 years, and I've never seen anything like what you did today. The way you saved Emma, the way you reached Marcus, you didn't just stop a crisis. You healed it." Zara was quiet for a long moment, looking around at the faces of her colleagues. People who had spent months making her feel invisible, who were now seeing her clearly for the first time. But more importantly, she was seeing herself clearly too. "I used to think I had to choose," she said finally, "between being a soldier and being a nurse, between my past and my future, between who I was and who I wanted to become." She gestured toward Emma Morrison, whose steady breathing filled the quiet NICU with the sound of hope. "But today I realized that maybe I don't have to choose. Maybe I can be both, a protector and a healer, someone who's willing to fight for life in whatever way it requires." Dr. Mitchell extended his hand to her, not as a superior to a subordinate, but as one professional to another. "Welcome to the team, Zara. The real team. The one where your voice matters, where your experience is valued, where you're not just seen but heard." As she shook his hand, Zara felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the sense of belonging. Not because she'd proven herself in some dramatic fashion, but because she'd finally allowed herself to be seen for who she truly was, all of who she was. Sometimes our greatest strength comes from embracing all parts of ourselves, even the parts we'd rather forget. Have you ever discovered that your biggest challenges prepared you for your most important moments? Share your story of finding strength in unexpected places. 6 months later, Zara Williams stood in the same NICU, watching Emma Morrison take her first steps in the hospital's physical therapy room. The little girl who had once fought for every breath was now a healthy, laughing toddler, her brother Ethan close behind her. Marcus Chin was there too, having been released into a treatment program that addressed both his grief and his actions. He'd become an advocate for mental health support for parents of NICU babies, working to ensure that no other father would walk the dark path he'd traveled. "She's beautiful," he said quietly, watching Emma toddle across the room toward her parents. "She's a fighter," Zara replied. "Just like her brother. Just like your Lily was." As they watched the Morrison family celebrate their daughter's milestone, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought them all to this moment. She was still a nurse, still dedicated to healing and protecting the most vulnerable patients. But she was also still a soldier. Not in the sense of carrying weapons or taking lives, but in the sense of being willing to stand guard over what mattered most. She'd learned that being called useless said more about the people doing the calling than it did about her. She'd learned that sometimes the most important battles are fought not with rifles and scopes, but with compassion and understanding. And she'd learned that true strength wasn't about choosing between who you were and who you wanted to be. It was about finding the courage to be both. In the end, Zara Williams had never stopped being a warrior. She just found a better war to fight. What did you think of Zara's journey from being dismissed to becoming the hero everyone needed? Sometimes the people we underestimate the most are exactly the ones who will surprise us when it matters most. Have you ever witnessed someone prove their worth in an unexpected way? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. If this touched your heart, then you're going to love the next one. It's just as powerful and even more intriguing than you can imagine. So don't stop here. Click the video showing on your screen right now and continue the journey. I'll be waiting for you on the other side of that story. See you there.